winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome back. You're in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou, and what a wonderful weekend it was. Don't you just feel it? Don't you just love it? It's football. That's what you're feeling. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed myself this weekend, and I've been bubbly all day. And look, besides the Redskins winning, which was a pleasant surprise, it was just a weekend full of good football. And so I kicked back, relaxed in my chair in front of two television sets and just watched football all day, and it was great. And so if I could just bottle that feeling up, that emotion up, and sell it, I'd be a millionaire. But I digress. Let's forget about all of that. Let's talk about the weekend that was. And look, I told you I was going to rectify the initial loss that I got, and I didn't do so. And I told you, I had already said that the first weekend of the season is unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. It was a mixed bag of NFL games, and you didn't know who was going to show up, who was going to be who. And it could have been a lot worse. Let's be frank here. Let's be frank. It could have been a lot worse than what it was. I ended the weekend, or at least Sunday, overall 9-5. There's 2 more games left. Of course, we're going to go over them today. And if I can win those 2 games, and I feel like I can, I don't see why I shouldn't, I'll finish the weekend at 11-5. I'll take that. After starting off with the initial loss of the Giants and having such a rocky weekend, and let's be candid here. I could have lost 7 games this weekend. It could have easily had the Browns were 1 interception away from beating the Eagles. The Rams were 1 stop away from beating the Lions. This could have easily turned into a 7-7 weekend, and this could have gotten ugly. This could have got out of. I could have been fighting for my 500 life tonight. Instead, I've comfortably secured 500 for the first week of the season, and I'm looking to pad my stats and to springboard me. I want to finish this week strong. I'm looking to springboard into next week, and that's what I plan to do tonight. But before we can go on to tonight, we have to go back to yesterday.
The weekend.
The weekend that was.
With Slate skating, with Slate skating, with Slate skating, with Slate skating.
And what a great day of football it was. And so we're going to start our slate skating through the league and all the games that took place yesterday in Chicago, where the Indianapolis Colts took on the Chicago Bears. So as you take a look at this game, the first thing that I jotted down on my notes was the Bears had an absolutely terrible start to the game. When I gave the preview for this game, I mentioned that the Colts would not get pressure on Jay Cutler. He'd have time to survey through his reads, make the right decision, and they were going to jump on the Colts early and have their way with them. And it was anything but that. It was actually the direct opposite. The Colts came out, first play of the game, sack of Jay Cutler, 12-yard loss, and the Bears are now staring at their own goal line, essentially. The next play was a penalty, which backed them up an additional 5 or 4 yards because it was like half the distance to the goal. And then they ended up having to punt. They get the ball back on the next possession. They're pinned inside their own 5-yard line. First play, interception, pick six, touchdown, Colts. And you can't get a worse start than the Chicago Bears did. They got off to a terrible start. And it was funny because everything I said in the preview was being contradicted initially. But as the game went along, things started to fall into place. And the Colts, they got pressure on Cutler early and often in that first half. And like I said, I said they wouldn't be able to get pressure. And Freeney went out of the game with the injury early on in the ball game. I mean, the first play of the game, Robert Mathis comes in and gets free, gets a sack. And that's what I said they wouldn't be able to do. Now, it was evident as the game went along that they don't have the pieces for that 3-4 defense. I spoke to that in the preview. They don't have the pieces for a 3-4 yet. And that's not uncommon when a coach comes in and wants to switch philosophies. You can't just switch a philosophy overnight. That 4-3 personnel is not just going to disappear. You have to take pieces from that, put it in your 3-4, and hope that it works. Over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, he's going to start to slowly implement his defense in terms of getting the players in that 3-4 defense that he feels are going to help that defense excel. And so it takes time. You can't just purge a roster overnight. And you have to slowly bring in the guys that you think fit what you want to do, and that's what the Colts are going to look to do. But right now, that's not going to be the case. They're just going to have to go with the parts that they have at those positions on defense. And so early on, though, that defense was playing good, solid football. Cavell Connor was making plays. Tom Zibikowski. Guys were stepping up and making plays. And so early on, that Colts defense was taking into that Bears offense. But after a string of Colt penalties and then a big, humongous, and the Bears really needed this, a huge Matt Forte run, I think it really springboarded the Bears, kind of settled them down, got them more focused, got them relaxed, because until that run, they really didn't have any positive plays on offense. The Colts were having penalties, prolonged drives, but they weren't doing anything themselves. And after that big run by Forte, I think it calmed them down. They settled down, and then that's when you could start to see the wheels turning and the Bears starting to get their legs under them and the Colts starting to realize that there was a huge disparity in talent and that this game wasn't going to go the way that it had started. Speaking of that big run, Matt Forte is Mr. Do-It-All for this Bears offense. Without Matt Forte, I don't know where the Bears... He made a number of huge catches out of the backfield. One-handed grab that was just ridiculous. Matt Forte does it all for this offense. I don't know where they would be without him. This is why I don't understand why it took so long for him to be paid. But nonetheless, he was huge in this game and was really the difference maker to send the Bears on their way. And watching this game, you could also tell that Cutler is looking for Brandon Marshall. They have a rapport. It's like they never separated from each other. He's looking for Brandon Marshall 80% of the time when he drops back, and they make beautiful music together. And look for Brandon Marshall to have a huge year, because Jay Cutler's going to force feed him the football, just like when they were in Denver and Brandon Marshall would have 100 catch seasons, because Jay Cutler was looking for him constantly. And I think that's going to happen this year again. Jay Cutler loves throwing the football to Brandon Marshall because he's a big target, and 9 times out of 10, he's going to come down with the football. You look on the other side of the field, and I thought that Andrew Luck struggled a bit, and I expected that. He looks good, and he's going to be okay, but he struggled a bit. But that's to be expected. I knew this Bears defense was going to be hard on him. He was going to try to force some throws in it. Probably weren't, he wasn't supposed to make. But all in all, they're a team without a lot of talent, and so guys let them down, dropped a few passes. Guys helped them out. And speaking of guys helping them out, Reggie Wayne is going to be a safety blanket for Andrew Luck. Watching the game, it was apparent that Reggie Wayne is going to be someone that Andrew Luck is going to rely on heavily this season. And Reggie Wayne made a number of huge acrobatic catches that I didn't know he could still make. and he bailed Andrew Luck out quite a few times. And so look for Andrew Luck to be looking for Reggie Wayne a lot this season. And also, watching the game, I thought that Andrew Luck handled the 2-minute drill right before the half beautifully. And you can't really execute it too much better than he did. They didn't come away with any points. The short leg, Adam Vinatieri ultimately missed the field goal, but still that was a beautiful 2-minute drive. It just gives you a sense of what Andrew Luck can do when under pressure. So he looked good there. But one thing that I did note, he needs to work on his footwork. His footwork was terrible, and it caused a lot of high throws. He was overthrowing a lot of his receivers. And in some instances, they were wide open on third downs, and he just couldn't get them the football because he didn't reset his feet, reshuffle them, and plant and get the ball down and get his mechanics down to allow the ball to go down instead of it just taking off and going over the head and sailing on his receivers. And he did that a number of times. We're talking 5 to 8 throws that just sailed on his receivers. And so that's something in the future that he's definitely going to have to work on to be a better quarterback in the National Football League. But all in all, the game went like I thought it would. I thought the Bears might get off to a better start than they did. But again, ultimately, the better team normally wins. And in this case, the Bears were the superior team, and they ultimately took this one 41-21. So from there, off we go to Cleveland, where the Cleveland Browns hosted the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this was one of the surprises of the weekend. I said in the preview that I thought the Eagles would start slow. And believe me, they started this game slow. I had everything about this game correct except the score. And I thought the Eagles were going to dominate eventually. But they didn't do that. They barely escaped Cleveland with a win. And who saw this one coming? I didn't. So let's dive into this game. And we start with the slow start of the Eagles. I said that I thought they would start slow. Vic got hurt in the preseason. He really hasn't played since. So I figured this offense would not be where it needed to be to start the season. But I said to myself, it's the Cleveland Browns. Now look, granted, the Browns are not that bad a defensive football team. Still, they're the Cleveland Browns. And so I said, they'll do more than enough to win this game comfortably. But Michael Vick and that offense would have none of it. Whether it was penalties, bringing back LaShawn McCoy runs, and these were long chunks that he was getting, huge chunks, getting called back for holding penalties, or Vic throwing 4 interceptions on the day. They couldn't get out of their own way, and so this game was a lot closer than it should have been. Luckily for the Eagles, the Browns were equally as bad, if not worse. And so the Eagles were able to escape by the skin of their teeth in this game. Let's talk about it, though. The Eagles didn't score their first points of the game until the second quarter with about 14 minutes and 46 seconds, something like that, early on in the second quarter. They didn't score any points at all in the first quarter. That's rare for the Eagles. And so I said they were going to start slow, but I couldn't imagine that it was going to be that bad. Vic was really banged around in this game. He was sacked. He was hit. He was molested. And he took a huge shot in that game in the fourth quarter on a run. And he fumbled, but he got it back. But this is the type of things that we're talking about with Vic that lend us to believe that he won't last a full 16-game season. It's just so hard for Vic to tell you, yeah, I'm going to try and not be as reckless and be more cautious of what I'm doing. But when you get on the football field, and I already said this, when you get on the football field, it's hard to channel, those thoughts into actions. When you get on the football field, it's more of a reaction than you just saying, all right, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to do it. You react more than you think. And as a football player, it's never more evident than when you're running with the football. You don't say, all right, in 10 yards, I'm going to spin. That defender and what he's doing dictates what you do with the football. in the spirit of the moment, you just decide a spin move is what I'm going to do to get away. And with Vic, it's hard for him to just say, I'm going to slide or I'm going to run out of bounds when he knows that the first down marker is only a yard away. And so he's going to take shots in the pocket, outside of the pocket, and he did that. And it forced, the Browns forced him into 4 interceptions. Now the Browns were trailing, they were trailing 10-9 in this football game when DeQuell Jackson picked off a Michael Vick pass and ran it in for a touchdown, a pick six that gave the Browns a 10-15 lead. Now here is when coaching comes into effect. Head coach Pat Shurmur had the decision to go for 2 or kick the extra point. Logic here tells you you're the Browns. We only had 9 points to this point. Our first touchdown of the season comes on the defensive side of the football. And so chances are my offense isn't going to score again. I best take the opportunity and go for 2 to make sure that if the Eagles score, they can only tie the game with an extra point. They would have to go for 2 for the win. Instead, and this is when coaching comes into play, he decides to kick the extra point, leaving the door open for a touchdown to beat you. And this is exactly what happened. Shurmur was supposed to go for 2. Instead, he elected to be cautious, and I don't know why, because even not converting the 2-point conversion, you're still down or up 1 score. Whether you don't make it going for 2 or you just miss the extra point, either way, 6 points, 5 points, it doesn't make a difference. You're going to lose the game with the touchdown and the extra point anyway. So the logical thinking there was go for 2. He blew it, and it ultimately helped cause his team to lose. And the reason why I say helped cause his team to lose is because linebacker LJ Ford, had 1 interception in the game and had the opportunity to close out the Eagles and get a win for the Cleveland Browns. This is what I spoke to on Friday on the preview show when I said that there's a separation, there's a line that is drawn between the good, the average, the bad, and the great teams in this league. The average to bad teams do what LJ Ford did, which is drop a game-clinching interception. He had a chance to beat the Eagles by securing an interception that went right through his hands. Another errant pass by Michael Vick on a 2nd and goal from about the 6-yard line that went right through his hands. He secures that. They get that pick. The game is essentially over for all intents and purposes. Instead, it goes through his hands. On the very next play, on 3rd and goal, Vic finds tight end Clay Harbor for the go-ahead score, and the Eagles win by that same score of 17-16. The difference between a good team like the Broncos, who came up with a big pick last night, and the Browns, who are a bad team every single year, that's your difference right there. A play was there to be made to get your team a victory. You don't do so, you lose the football game. It happens all the time in the National Football League, and it's what separates the good teams from the bad teams. And so, and one little extra caveat for this game, and that's worth mentioning, is Brandon Weeden. He's one of the starting 5, so we must talk about him. And he was awful yesterday, just putrid. He was 12 of 31 with a passer rating of 5 and barely over 100 yards, like 115, 121 yards passing, something like that, 108. 4 interceptions, no touchdowns. He was horrendous. And the bad part about it was you wouldn't even know that Trent Richardson played if you didn't watch the game, because he was a non-factor as well. 19 carries, 39 yards. We're talking less than 3 yards a carry. We're talking less than 2.5 yards a carry We're talking about a little over 2 yards a carry. That's not going to get it done in the National Football League. And so your first 2 draft picks who you're hinging upon, and again, Trent Richardson didn't play all preseason. First NFL action, first game action, coming off of the surgery. You expect him to be a little slowed by the transition that he has to make. So I'll cut him some slack. But if you're a Browns fan, all that optimism you had coming into the season has been tapered greatly by the outcome of the first game and the way that your first 2 draft picks in the 2012 draft performed on Sunday is not something that you are looking forward to if you're a Browns fan. And they need to be better, or else you're going to be the same miserable Browns that you are year in and year out with no hope. Right now you have hope that you're clinging to, but I can tell you what, if you're a Browns fan, that hope is quickly turning to despair if you have more performances like this from your first 2 draft picks that you took in the first round in this year's draft. And I mean, the last of his 4 picks wasn't even close. I don't even know the game-clinching pick that the Eagles got to seal the victory. I don't even know who he was throwing the football to. And that's alarming to me. He was just chucking it up at that point. And so he's got to be better. Brandon Weeden did not look good at all yesterday. He looked flustered. He looked confused. The Browns on several occasions had more than one receiver in the same vicinity, in the same general area. I don't know what was going on with the whole team, but they just didn't look like a football team that was ready for the first game of the NFL season, at least on the offensive side of the football. And so they got a lot of work to do. And I'm going to tell you what, if you're a Browns fan, you had to ask yourself, what would have happened if we had Colt McCoy in the game? Maybe we get 2 more field goals. Maybe we win this game. You don't know. Those questions have to be asked if you're a Cleveland Browns fan. And so it's early. You put the young man in. He's a rookie. Let him stay in the game and learn. But I'm going to tell you what. Games like yesterday make it hard to watch if you're a Cleveland Browns fan. And so the Browns fell to the Eagles 17-16. Eagles moved to 1-0. Browns dropped to 0-1, as we suspected. And so let's see if these teams can play better next week in their week 2 respective games. As we continue to skate through the slate of games that happened on Sunday, we find ourselves in Tennessee where the Titans took on the New England Patriots. And I thought that Jake Locker came out initially in this game and looked solid. I was actually pleasantly surprised. And again, I was hard on Jake Locker. I'm going to continue to be hard on Jake Locker because I didn't think he was ready. But he took steps in the right direction in terms of showing me what he was made of. Early on in the game, he was accurate, precise in and out of the pockets, giving his receivers a chance to make a play after the catch because the ball was put in the area that it needed to be for them to be able to run after the catch. I thought he looked solid early on, and even though it didn't amount to points all the time, I thought he looked good early on. He was solid. This game could have got out of hand earlier than it did. Brady barely missed on a connection with Brandon Lloyd early on. I want to say it was either their first or second possession of the game. And so they end up punting on that possession. But if they connect there and then they go down and score on that next possession, which they did to Brady connected with Hernandez, you're looking at a 14-0 deficit. At that point, you got to be asking yourself, is this thing going to get out of control early? But they missed on the connection between Brady and Brandon Lloyd, and so it kept them in the game. It kept the game at 0-0 at that time. Brady goes down and scores the next possession, but the Titans were in the ball game for the most part early on. And so I thought that was key for Tennessee to stay in the game early on. But how disappointing was the running game for the Titans? On both sides of the ball, running the ball and stopping the run. How disappointing was it for the Titans? I mean, Chris Johnson had 11 carries for 4 yards. Are you kidding me? I mean, in the preview, we talked about Chris Johnson having to shoulder the burden of this team, and they were going to only have a chance if he was able to run the football and carry the load. Well, he did less than carry the load. He actually was a burden on this Tennessee Titans football team, and they didn't run the football at all. They didn't run it good. And then to make matters worse, they allowed the Patriots to run the football more than just effectively, more than just a balanced attack. They allowed the Patriots to gash them in the run game. Stephen Ridley had over 100 yards rushing, and he did it easily. And we're talking 20 to 21 carries for over 115 yards rushing. I mean, he made it look easy all day against this Titans run defense. And this wasn't something I thought they would have an issue with. And so that was alarming if you were a Tennessee Titans fan watching this game. And just from me watching the game, from my standpoint, I just thought that it was bad because you're putting more pressure on Jake Locker to have to carry this offense. It's already enough. It's already bad enough that he has to go out there and try to make do on the offensive side of football, being that he doesn't have that much experience. It's already hard enough for him to have to go out there and do his job. He doesn't need to have to do the running game's job as well. And a lot of times they found themselves in 2nd and 11, 2nd and 12, 2nd and 9. And essentially now you're in two passing downs. And so it was rough, but I thought Jake Locker responded well. He played good. He was under duress a lot, and he made things happen, though. This Patriots defense looks a lot better. Watching the game, again, it's only week 1, but Chandler Jones was getting pressure. He forced a fumble. The combination of Jones and Hightower, the 2 first-round draft picks of the Patriots, they combined for a touchdown as Chandler Jones stripped and sacked Jake Locker in the end zone, forcing a fumble that trickled out to about the 5 or 6 yard line. Dante Hightower scoops it up, goes into the end zone, gets a touchdown. And look, the Patriots are starting out the 2012 campaign on defense the right way, the way Bill Belichick wants to do it. And I told you when we talked about them in their lab reports and in their experiment, Bill Belichick wasn't going to allow this defense to be horrendous 2 years in a row. And so it's only week 1, but I can't see them being as bad as they were last year. And this game is probably a microcosm of how this season is going to go, because they were great on defense against the Titans. They gave up some plays in the passing game, but all in all, you look at the running attack for the Titans, and it was non-existent. And so the Patriots really stifled these guys on the defensive side of the football. And I think the Titans really need to find a way to go to Jared Cook more. He's an explosive tight end, and I think is a mismatch for a lot of these teams in the league, and they need to find a way to get him the football more. When he got the football against the Patriots, he was very effective. He had 4 catches, 78 yards. So we're talking well over 16 yards a catch. And so if they can get him the football more, I think it's going to pay dividends for this Titans offense. But again, they need to find ways to get the ball in playmakers' hands. You see Nate Washington is a playmaker for you. I think Jared Cook is going to be a playmaker for you. You get Kenny Britt back, he's going to be a playmaker for you, and you're going to have to find a way to get the ball in these guys' hands. Chris Johnson has to show up, though. He cannot afford to leave these Titans out, essentially out to dry in the run game. They have to have him be consistent. So ultimately, the Patriots defense turned out to be the difference in this game, making plays, forcing turnovers, getting pressure on Jake Locker, and ultimately knocking him out of the game. Of course, he got hurt making a tackle on an interception, but nonetheless, the defense was special. And yes, I just said that. The Patriots defense was special against the Tennessee Titans, and it took them to a 34-13 victory over these Titans. And so the Patriots look poised to make a run in the AFC if they can continue to play defense like they did Sunday afternoon against these very Tennessee Titans. Moving on down our slate, those same Patriots will be battling in this division. And I said this to start the season. A lot of people thought I was crazy because of the way they mightily struggled in the preseason. But these New York Jets, who took on the Buffalo Bills, these Jets are going to be the prime contenders for the throne of the Patriots in that AFC East. And I said it, and I didn't stutter when I said it before the season started. Look out for these Jets. Been talking to people. They all think I'm crazy. The Jets don't have any offense. The defense is getting washed up. And I'm trying to tell them, Rex Ryan has a new crop of guys on that defense. They're going to be better on defense. Their offense is going to come around. Tony Sperano is going to be a breath of fresh air for this offense. And what do you know? The Buffalo Bills show up to town, and the Jets feel like scoring 48 points. Can I get the 40 burger alert? 40 burger, 40 burger, 40 burger, 40 burger. And I probably should have did that for the Bears as well. But that's the 40 burger alert. The Bills got a 40 burger dropped on their skull on Sunday afternoon. And who saw this coming? A team goes from not scoring essentially at all in the preseason to putting up 48 points the first game of the season. And again, I tell you, defenses usually are behind the offense, so it's not uncommon for you to see a lot of 30 and 40-point outbursts early on in the season because offenses are light years ahead of defenses when the season starts. And so the Jets jumped on the Bills early, and they never looked back. They stepped on their throats. And I thought Sanchez got off to a good start. Now, granted, he threw that early, ugly pick. Yeah, again, he was channeling his inner Brett Favre, I guess, with a terrible, just a little flick that ended up being picked off by the Bills as he was going towards the sideline. But, I mean, after that, he rebounded and he played exceptionally well. And I thought he looked reminiscent of his rookie season when he took the Jets to the AFC Championship game. Minimal mistakes, not a lot of risk, keeping the pass attempts down. He only attempted, I want to say, 26 pass attempts, maybe 27 or 28, and keeping those down, 19 completions. And he just looked good. He was sharp. He was on the money. He made good throws, accurate. And I thought this is what he was going to look like all along, you know, especially after he teased us in that playoff run in his rookie season. And so if he can continue to play like this, you got to feel good as a Jets fan. And I thought he would play this well. I'm not surprised one bit. I thought we would see more chicanery, more trickery from the Jets. And maybe that's still yet to come with Sperano as your offensive coordinator and Tim Tebow there. But they kept it simple. They just ran the football. I thought that the Jets' running attack was solid. Sean Green had an okay game, nothing spectacular, but they don't need him to be spectacular. Just move the chains, keep the down and distance somewhat ahead of the chains, and keep Mark Sanchez in reasonable third down situations, which they did all day when they were in third down, and allow him to complete passes and keep the chains moving. And I thought they did a great job of doing that. It was a good balance. Defense played well. And so, I don't know. Jeremy Curley showed up. And Rex Ryan sometimes doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut. Maybe he knows he's motivating guys. I don't know. Either way, he came out over the offseason and said Jeremy Curley isn't doing anything. He's not impressing me. In fact, he's doing everything but impressing me right now. And Jeremy Curley came out and had a fantastic game. Caught a touchdown pass, ran a punt back for a touchdown. And so he's starting to show what his value is to this Jets football team. And I thought that was fitting because Rex always speaking out against these receivers. I'm not a fan. I was never a fan of drafting Stephen Hill. And my thing to Rex is shut up. You have an ultra-talented receiver. He's big. He has a skill set that is among the new breed of receivers. The height, weight, speed guy. He's a 6'3", 4'3" physical specimen. Shut up. Help him hone his skills and watch him work and pay dividends for your offense, as Stephen Hill did on Sunday when he caught 2 touchdown passes. Shut up and let the man work. And that's exactly what Stephen Hill did. Now let's see what Rex Ryan has to say. I bet he's taking his foot out of his mouth as we speak and backpedaling as fast as he can. He didn't backpedal fast enough when he got knocked down in the fourth quarter yesterday. But nonetheless, I digress. Back to the game, and I thought Stephen Hill looked wonderful. And I think he's going to be an asset for the Jets this season, despite what Rex Ryan thinks. And this offense is going to be as good as Mark Sanchez is and as good as that offensive line is. And I thought both were good yesterday. And again, if you're the Bills, this is what I talked about. You spent all of this money on defense. For what? What dividends is it paying? We didn't see the pressure that the Bills thought they were going to get when they paid Mario Williams, when they paid Mark Anderson. And so you say to yourself, what is going on with this Bills defense? And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter how much pressure these guys apply, and they really didn't apply much to Mark Sanchez all day. But it doesn't really matter how much pressure they apply if these corners aren't going to be able to hold up on the back end. And I told you, they got young corners out there. It's a young man movement out in Buffalo right now in the corner, at the corner position, and they're phasing out veterans along that secondary. And it shows. You know, they got beat. And again, they're going to get, if they're good, they'll get better. These will be lessons learned. But it's going to be lessons learned the hard way. And so, hard for me to believe that spending that money is going to pay immediate dividends when you have corners out there who are going to be learning on the fly all year. And so I already talked about the young corners out there and the problems that it's going to present these Bills. And so it showed on Sunday. Again, I'm not going to let Ryan Fitzpatrick and this Bills offense off the hook either, though. They were terrible yesterday. And Fitzpatrick in particular was horrendous. And he had one pick that ended up being a pick six to Cromartie. And you ask yourself, who were you throwing a football to? What did you see that we didn't see? Because you threw that football with such velocity and such intention, like you knew somebody was supposed to be there or someone was there. And it went straight to Cromartie. It was easy, it was simple, and it was a touchdown the other way. What are you doing? And since they gave you that money, I haven't seen the Ryan Fitzpatrick that started the season last year with 14 touchdowns and 7 interceptions with a passer rating up over 90. Where's that guy? He's missing. He's on a milk carton somewhere. Has anybody seen Ryan Fitzpatrick, the 2011 first 8 games of the season version? If you have, call 1-800-BILLS-QB. That's 1-800-BILLS-QB. So the Jets knock off the Buffalo Bills 48-28. Wow, a lot of points for the Jets. Bills have to be concerned. Interdivision game, and you weren't even close. That's disheartening. They got to be better. We'll see what they do to rebound in week 2. As we continue our skate through the slate of games on Sunday afternoon, we find ourselves next in Detroit, where the Lions had a battle on their hands, and their hands full with the St. Louis Rams. This was a game that I was flat out dead wrong about. I thought that the Detroit Lions were going to jump on the St. Louis Rams early in this game, have them questioning whether they were good enough to play against these Detroit Lions, and this game was going to be over before halftime. I was wrong. These Rams came out and they bended to the max. They were so flexible. They bent and bent and bent, but they never broke in this game. Matthew Stafford had solid numbers in the first half. Solid numbers. Had you not watched the game, you would have had no indication that that the Lions weren't up 21-3 going into halftime. He was moving the Lions offense up and down the field. However, he made critical mistakes, and these Rams took full advantage of them once they crossed midfield. The first of his 3 picks came at the goal line. I mean, he took them all the way to the 5-yard line and threw a pick at the goal line. Janoris Jenkins picks it off, flips the field for the Rams. The Lions get the ball back again. Stafford takes them down to the 30-yard line, picked off again by Jolon Dunbar, and flipped the field position once again. And then the third of his first half picks goes for a pick six as Cortland Finnegan picks it off right around the 40-yard line, their own 40-yard line, and take it the other way for a touchdown. And so Stafford struggled in that first half with his decision making. And these weren't plays where he was under duress and had to get rid of the football and made an errant throw. He had time in the pocket to go through his progressions, make the right read, make the right decision, make the right throw. And he just, again, and this is the gunslinger in Matthew Stafford. He has a very strong arm and has the tendency to think that he can fit balls in tight spaces that he probably shouldn't try to fit them in. And this is what he did in instances where he had no business even thinking of throwing a football. The pick to Janoris Jenkins, the pick to Jolon Dunbar, even the pick to Cortland Finnegan. Neither one of these picks should have ever happened. These were all bad decisions. These were all bad throws. And kudos to the Rams for making him pay for his mistakes. It kept them in this ball game. And for the longest time, and literally 4/5 of this game, the Rams were leading in this game. Literally had the Lions dead to right and just could not secure victory. And I thought that the Rams actually played a solid game. Nothing overwhelming. You look at all the numbers across the board. You watch the game. You watch how that offense operated. They operated like a Jeff Fisher team. They looked like the St. Louis Titans out on the football field. They're not going to wow you with the stats. It's not going to be a pretty game. They're going to put you to sleep. And then you look up in the fourth quarter. And I said this about the Titans already. You look up in the fourth quarter and you find yourself in a dogfight and you think you're dreaming. Did I just wake up from a bad dream? No. You're in a dogfight with less than 3 minutes to go in the game. And you want to know, how the hell am I trailing 20-23? That's what happens when you play a Jeff Fisher coached team, especially when his team is not better than your team. They put you to sleep. They lull you to sleep with some very tough, hard-nosed, but yet uninspiring plays. But it's enough to keep them in the game. And Sam Bradford was not impressive. But he wasn't terrible either. He was average. He made a great throw to Gibson for that touchdown pass on that left sideline, and that was a gorgeous catch as well. But other than that, there weren't many plays that they made on offense that were eye-popping, that were eye-opening, that you said, okay, I see what they're doing. They just were steady. Steven Jackson didn't have a successful game, 20-something, 20, 21 carries, like 65, 67 yards. Nothing spectacular. Not even 4 yards a carry. But what they did was they kept the ball game close. Wore on that Detroit Lions defense. Kept that offense off the field. And even when they were on the field, forced them into mistakes, turnovers. Forced them to kick field goals. And so they kept themselves in the ball game. I saw Danny Amendola, and I saw him in the preseason, but it's good to see him back in the regular season. He looks good. He's back. He had a number of catches, got chunks of yards, which is what he does for those Rams in that offense. And so he's going to be an asset for the Rams in this 2012 season. But again, Jeff Fisher coach team is always going to be dangerous. They're going to play hard. They're going to play sound defense, and they're going to be in ball games. This was never more the case than on Sunday, and look for this to be an ongoing theme with these St. Louis Rams this season. They may not win a lot of games, but they're going to be in a lot of games. Also, I thought that I would mention that Kevin Smith played a huge role in this game. It's funny because everything comes full circle. Kevin Smith, of course, was an early round draft pick of the Lions. in like 2008. They felt like they no longer needed his services with the emergence of Javid Best, and they drafted Mikael LaShore, and they had other guys, Keelan Williams, step up, and so they felt like they didn't need Kevin Smith's services, and they let him go, and he was out on the streets, and lo and behold, Javid Best has his 87th concussion, and Mikael LaShore, whether he's smoking weed or he's injured, he can't get on the field. And, Keelan Williams isn't really that guy you're looking to put in the game. And so, lo and behold, the Lions come calling again for Kevin Smith. Last year, they brought him back on the roster for probably the last 5 or 6 games of the season due to injuries and guys just being not in the lineup. And he produced. So much so that they brought him back again this year. Look who ended up playing a huge role in the game, none other than Kevin Smith. Good for you. He scored the game-winning touchdown. He scored the go-ahead touchdown before the game-winning touchdown when they were trailing to give them the lead that they ultimately relinquished and then had to come back and get. And he scored that touchdown as well. So kudos to Kevin Smith. And I'm glad to see you back in Detroit and serving a purpose and paying dividends for that franchise and showing them that they should have never let you go in the first place. And so the Lions squeak away at home, nonetheless. Squeak away with a 27-23 victory over the St. Louis Rams. Look out for these Rams. They're going to be a scary team to play this season.